Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Waypoint. Today we are playing Need for Speed High Stakes, the fourth game in the series and the first one to drop for numbering. It's just as well really, because we're probably on Need for Speed 27 or something by now. We are exploring the PlayStation 1 version of this game as per tradition, and as of the time of this video going live, I am celebrating my 30th birthday. Time comes at you first, I'll tell you what. In a weird way, I am considering this a kind of weekly waypoint milestone because I started this series when I was 23. I started this series as a weekly creative project to do and see if I could keep it up every week, and I did not think I would still be doing this in my 30s, so I am very happy to still be here doing this. Actually wait, no, sorry, maths is hard, I would have been 22. So the Weekly Waypoint has kind of become this snapshot of my gaming life, I suppose, of my time with this hobby throughout most of my 20s. But enough about me, you want to hear about Need for Speed High Stakes, don't you? I'll be honest, I didn't really get on with this game to begin with. In fact, in this first race I put the difficulty up to intermediate, and I quickly realised the difficulty in this game is probably more tied to the kind of car you have and the upgrades you have in it, and you probably shouldn't start out playing it on intermediate because you're not going to get very far, although that big crash did not help. But yes, Need for Speed High Stakes is the fourth game. It continues to evolve the game. It now is starting to take steps towards realism, I feel. I mean, I didn't get to try out the later tracks, which have the possibility to become a little bit more bombastic and weird if it's anything like the previous titles, but I did notice when I was skipping through the track list, it does seem to mostly be like, this track is based in France, this track is based in Canada, this track is based in so-and-so, and instead of being like, oh, this track has this name, and, you know, it's a small thing, but it definitely feels like a different step for the series. The main difference with this game is it's the first Need for Speed to have, or at least the first Need for Speed I've noticed, to have a real hardcore career mode, in that you buy a car at the start of your save file and you earn money, not for completing single races, I found out by the way, probably for tournaments and stuff, but then you use that money to buy upgrades for your car or to buy better cars. This is all starting to sound familiar, isn't it? And a lot more tracks were kind of locked behind, you know, you have to unlock them by completing championships and stuff, and the same for cars, and that's why we didn't really do what we've been doing, which is go for every track and every car. We kind of stick to a single car and the only free tracks which are available to us, but I did decide to take this opportunity to then go back and play these free tracks again in Hot Pursuit mode, which is something I did not show off for the previous game. And in Hot Pursuit mode, you can choose almost any vehicle you want. Also, after recording it, I quickly became aware that I should have done Hot Pursuit mode in the previous game because it's hilarious and probably a little bit more engaging to watch. So I will try to make sure I include some Hot Pursuit mode races in future games, assuming they still have them. But yeah, the main reason I didn't get on with this game so much at the start is because the handling is a little weird. The car, you might notice it, if you see me randomly swerving a little bit, I don't know if it's just my copy of the game or whatever. It's certainly not my controller, because I did test it on other games, but it feels like I have stick drift. The car just starts swerving to the left or to the right if I leave it alone for too long, and I feel like I'm constantly battling with the car to get it back on the track. At first, or not back on the track, but you know what I mean, pointing in the direction I want it to be pointing. At first I was wondering if it was because I was using an entry-level car, and if I upgraded my handling or something it might fix it, but then when I was in Hot Pursuit mode I was able to play with more endgame level cars, more like hypercars and stuff like that, and it was still a problem there. So I really don't know what's going on with this game, if that's a feature of this game or if it's just a weird oddity with my version of it. But I eventually adjusted and it stopped being too much of a problem. Also, we had to disable the music for this game again, I'm afraid. They started using licensed music. God damn it, EA. Also, it's EA now. There was an Electronic Arts logo at the start of this game, alongside a very charming little intro movie of a racing scene that they animated, which I actually thought was pretty cool. I'm gonna have to make this a thing. I'm gonna have to make myself stop and watch the intro movies instead of just skipping through them. As far as racing games and intro movies go, the one that stuck in my mind the one that's most iconic to me is probably the very first Midnight Club game, just with the music. It's so iconic. But yeah, for anyone wondering, the Hot Pursuit mode in this game is pretty much exactly the same from what I remember from the previous game, Hot Pursuit, in that you can take a fine if the police slow you down and surround you, and after taking 2 fines, the third one will knock you out of the race. You can also undertake one of these races solo, so just you trying to survive against the police, I guess, for a good time. As in like posting a good lap time. Or you can do a duel with another racer, which is what I did. But yeah, High Stakes is a different beast to Hot Pursuit. Like I said, it's more realistic as well with like the graphics and how put together it is. It just, like I said, how Hot Pursuit felt a lot more solid than Need for Speed 2. It's the same with High Stakes in regards to Hot Pursuit. It just feels like it continues to come together more cleanly each time. That's the fun thing about the PS1 era. You can really tell developers getting more and more adept with engine work and making worlds look good, because early PS1 games look a lot rougher than late PS1 games. And High Stakes came out in 1999. In fact, I forgot to do this with Hot Pursuit, but let's head to the wiki and start reading out some interesting factoids about the game. Oh, it was released as Need for Speed Road Challenge in Europe. That's what that game's about. Okay, it's the same game. Got it. It received 8 out of 10s across the board. It was more like an 8.5 out of 10 in terms of just standard Metacritic aggregate. I don't know why I'm talking like this. Okay, strictly speaking, this game does not have a career mode. It has a tournament mode, but the PC version of this game does have a career mode. I'll get that in there for anyone who wants to be nitpicky about it. It might be fun at some point to go and do a retrospective of the PC versions of each of these games, but again, they're harder to get hold of, so we'll see about that. But yeah, no, there's not all that much interesting trivia about this game, I guess. And for reference, since we forgot about it last week, Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit received 7 out of 10s and 8 out of 10s, kind of like middling between those two scores. So this game actually reviewed a lot better than that one, even though I think broadly speaking I preferred the previous game. That being said, as I mentioned earlier, I did grow to enjoy my time with High Stakes, and I could see myself maybe just going through it and actually doing the career, or the, you know, just trying to buy better cars and stuff like that at some point. I should also mention there were no cheat codes to be able to skip all of that stuff. A little bit like the later Tony Hawk games, I ran into that same problem of I can't just throw in cheat codes and bypass the progression of this game to show off like the later levels and stuff. That's why we haven't done that. Well, that's partially why we haven't done that. There's also just more of them and we wouldn't be able to fit them all into this format. I did like the levels though, despite them being a little bit more realistic. There was a really nice like cherry blossom tree segment coming up in this one, and I also really liked the train one as well, where you kind of like see the train at different areas of the track. It's a fun little concepts there. But enough about Need for Speed. I would like to take a little bit of time today talking about Not-E3 and the various announcements which stuck out to me and stuff. And I do just want to mention over on Dimension Jam, the kind of group channel project that I run with my friends, we are starting to do a weekly news coverage of gaming and stuff like that, and we will have little scripted things about, you know, the games that stuck out to us during Not-E3. But I do still retain my waffling rights in the weekly waypoints, so here we shall waffle with no script to guide our way. We'll go through the presentations in the order that they came out in, and to start with we've got Sony's State of Play, which I didn't even know was happening and wasn't paying attention to because I don't own a PS5, but I heard lots of buzz about it after it happened. I was at work at the time, and some people told me you should probably watch it because it's mostly multi-platform stuff anyway, or stuff which will eventually end up on PC. I went, yeah, sure. And I watched it, and blooming heck, that was a pretty good State of Play, wasn't it? No Ratchet and Clank Classics Collection yet. That's usually what I tune into these things for, but hey, a man can dream. No, the main thing that stood out to me and that I'm going to talk about here is Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles, because while I've never played it, and while I'm not really a huge strategy RPG person yet, I am working on that. I do have Triangle Strategy. I've heard nothing but good things from my FC, from the group of people who are most Final Fantasy inclined in my life. I know that Tactics is beloved and revered, and for a long time people have been saying it's absurd that it hasn't been recreated yet, and lo and behold, it's been not just remastered, but also slightly remade. The really cool thing that they are doing is that they are including a classic version alongside an enhanced version, meaning that people who just want to play the game as it was can do that, although you will now have to deal with autosaves, you poor people. But the enhanced edition comes with voice acting from the likes of Ben Starr and maybe Colin Ryan. They haven't confirmed that, but I swear I heard Alphanod in there. Alphano, damn it, I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV for years now and I still get the pronunciation wrong. I refuse to believe that D is silent. I don't care that the French language exists. But it also comes with a enhanced UI, turn timer, and the thing that I'm not too keen on, up-resed graphics, or not up-resed graphics, but kind of redone graphics. They've been zhuzhed up a little bit, but by zhuzhed up, it looks more like AI smoothing and upscaling, which does not look good on pixel art. I don't know if it's actually AI done, or if it was hand done, and it just looks similar to that kind of a style. But I'm kind of hoping that they will allow us to have a classics graphic option alongside the enhanced gameplay, because I just think that looks nicer. It looks cleaner, it looks nice, it just, give me the crunchy pixel art, that's what I want. I think some of the HD 2D games are a little bit guilty of this as well. Obviously they're not like changing pre-existing pixel art, but what they'll do is they'll do pixel art and then they'll apply a sort of filter over it to make it look a little bit more blendy, and I don't want it to look a little bit more blendy, I want it to look crisp. I think it's Triangle Strategy I'm thinking of that does that. But yeah, I'm absolutely eyeing up this game, especially since it's £40, which is a very reasonable price, especially nowadays, especially with Sonic World Crossroads being 65 bones. Sega really think that they can charge Mario Kart World money. Mario Kart World can't charge Mario Kart World money. The only reason people are buying it on launch is because they can get it as part of a console bundle for cheap. But we're jumping ahead. Other notable things from the state of play for me was just that Bloodstained is getting a new entry. I played a little bit of the first game on Game Pass and it was really cool, and that's just, in general, the Castlevania games and the Bloodstained games are ones that I really want to get into. It's a genre I've not really sat with, but they are ones that appeal to me, not just for type of game it is, but also like the aesthetic, the whole vampire thing going on. Hell yeah, dude. But yeah, this new Bloodstained game looks like a really nice evolution on the original. It looks like the original was successful enough to finance a slightly beefier sequel. We'll have to see if that ends up being the case. I was also delighted to see Digimon Story Time Stranger, because I did start Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth not too long ago, my very first Digimon experience, and I quite like what I've played so far, so it's good to see that the Digimon franchise remains in good health, and that specific series is continuing on. And finally, I'm not a fighting game guy, never have been, but that Marvel Tokon game, oh my goodness, that looks gorgeous and really uniquely styled for a Marvel game as well, and I kind of want it. I kind of want to learn how to do fighting games now. Then there was Summer Games Fest and Day of the Devs. There really wasn't a lot for me in Summer Games Fest, and I'm really glad that I stuck around for Day of the Devs, because normally that's when I head off just because it's getting quite late at that point. But I actually watched these showcases on a call with my friends, which weirdly isn't something I've ever really done before, and it was a really good time. Like, yeah, I missed a lot of what was actually physically said, and part of my brain was going, I need to hear what they're saying. But no, I had way more fun just like gas-bagging with my friends and like going, oh, what kind of game is this game? Ooh, and like obviously we missed parts of like, oh, hey, we're these people and we're striving for this, but that's fine. Had much more fun just reacting with my friends instead. But yeah, Summer Games Fest felt very corporatized this year. Maybe it always has, but we were just remarking on how it feels like with every Jeff Keighley showcase, you get like these startup game companies you've never heard of with a massive budget for their games, or at least it looks like they have a massive budget for their games. And these games usually have some kind of celebrity name or face attached to them, and then they come out and you never hear from them again, and they end up being really negatively reviewed. And it just feels like the Summer Games Fest showcase and the Game Awards showcase is absolutely full of games like that, and maybe we're just being cynical, but I don't know, it really does feel more and more like you're gonna see so much forgettable, like, high polished turds, if I'm being really mean, but that's just like the quickest way to sum up what I'm talking about. I was jump scared by that Game of Thrones game because last year they announced a Game of Thrones game and it was just a mobile game. Ew! But this time it's a real-time strategy game, which is actually a really good fit for the Game of Thrones genre. Unfortunately, they didn't show any actual gameplay, which is the most important thing, but you can get mods for Civilization and I assume other strategy games to kind of like turn it into Westeros and stuff. So despite the real-time strategy genre not being the standout genre that it was like 20 years ago, I still think this is a really good fit for a Game of Thrones game. But it was slightly surprising to see them lean into the kind of Season 8 aesthetic of like the Long Night and Jon Snow versus the Night King and stuff, because I'm like, why do they keep going this way? They know everyone hated that season, right? I'm a bit of an apologist. I still had fun. I can see, obviously, it had flaws. But yeah, I'm like, I'll keep an eye on that one, I guess. I already mentioned Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. I was sort of excited about that until I saw the price, and then I was like, whoa. No! I'm also curious about this Lego Party game, which is obviously their version of Mario Party. I've never actually played a Mario Party game, because I feel like half my friendship group never has the Nintendo console at the time. So Lego Party might remedy that, you never know. Blighted is an indie game which was my standout of both showcases, because it was in both showcases. It's a kind of top-down isometric action RPG from the creators of Guacamelee and Nobody Saves the World, and it just passes the vibe check. It's so colourful, but it's also so dark at the same time in theme. It's kind of cel shady, but also kind of... It's kind of got the Metaphor ReFantazio look, actually. I guess I have something to compare it to. Obviously, it doesn't look really anything like that game in terms of graphical fidelity and camera angles and all that stuff, but just in terms of the kind of like harsh outlines and the colours and stuff, I was put in mind of Metaphor. And it just looks gorgeous and it looks really fun and I just want to play it. I haven't felt this way about an indie game since maybe Death's Door. And honestly, Day of the Devs in general really had me rethinking my priority in terms of games. I came out of a showcase going, I need to be giving AAA games less time and indie games more time. Like, I'm not just gonna blanket say all AAA games are bad, all indie games are good. Obviously, there's more nuance to it than that. But I really did come out with a sense of, like, I have not been giving indie games the time of day unless they, like, come to Game Pass and then I play a couple hours or whatever. I need to start investing in indie games because it also solves one of the problems I've been having and that I've been talking about recently, which is just, I'm so drawn to these massive AAA, like 100-hour long experiences, and I don't have the attention span to stick with them. Well, here are these more tightly crafted, like passionately made, smaller, shorter experiences which I could just enjoy and be done with because they're shorter games and get everything there is to get out of them. I feel like my attitude towards these longer games is a holdover from a belief I had when I was like a teenager in my early 20s, when I was thinking like, you've got to get the most value out of a game and longer games equal more value and stuff. And while I quickly came to realize that's not always true, there is still that part of me that cringes at the prospect of investing in a game that I'm going to be done with in an hour or two. But then I think about some of my favourite games which I've played on Game Pass, and it's been Cocoon, and it's been Omno, and it's been like these games which you're done with in a couple of hours. It's been Donut County, sorry, not country, Donut County. And yeah, I just feel like maybe, you know, they're not all 1 to 2 hour experiences, but like Death's Door is probably like a 10-hour long game, you know? Same for Tunic, you know? Maybe I should be giving these games more of a look in, because I'm only spending up to 10 hours with these 100-hour long AAA games anyway, so what am I worrying about? And indie games in general just have the spirit of gaming that I grew up with. These PS1 games, these PS2 games. If they were made today, they would be made by indie devs. They would be indie titles. That is the scope of them. And these are the kinds of games that I like. AAA games as we know them now didn't really exist back in the day, so I just kind of got swept along with that as gaming grew, and maybe I should reassess. Anyway, that's my ramble on indie games. Let's get back to what I liked in the showcase itself. We saw more from that Big Walk game where you kind of run around as this goofy guy with other goofy guys, and there's proximity voice chat, and you're like solving puzzles together, or you're just hanging out on this island together, and it looks really fun and silly. It does look like it requires other people to, at the very least, get the most out of, so it would have to be a group endeavor, but it's a group endeavor I really want to have. It just looks so damn charming. I was grinning ear to ear the entire time, and it's really hard to sell charming just by talking about it. You really have to go and watch it for yourself, but I highly recommend you do go check out Big Walk because, oh my god, it looks adorable. Other games I put on my wish list, and you can hear more about this on the Dimension Jam channel later this week, are Mixtape, Tire Boy, Moonlighter 2, Tome 2, and Sword of the Sea. The next game showcase I watched in full was the Future Games Showcase, which was another one chock full of indie games to keep your eye on. There was a spotlight on Titan Quest 2, which I am still really looking forward to, although they mentioned it's coming out in early access, and that did bum me out a little bit because I'm thinking that's the kind of game where I might wait for a full release on. I'll wait and see what people say about it and just how much content it actually launches with, but so excited for Titan Quest 2. I recently played a whole bunch of Titan Quest 1, and while the age of it kind of like pushed me away eventually in terms of like game design, it's still a game I want to play with Reese, but yeah, just the idea of like a Diablo style game in like ancient Greek mythology is so cool, and everything coming out of Titan Quest 2 so far looks so good. There was also this Hell Is Us game, which I originally wrote off because I wasn't sure I liked the aesthetic, but it looks a little bit Zelda/Elden Ringy in terms of the open world design, and I don't know if it's like a full-on Souls-like or not because I do not gel with Souls-like, but I'm starting to realize I might need to start training myself on Souls-likes because there are so many Souls-likes that get announced that look like I would absolutely vibe with if I got on with the genre, and I'm starting to realize, damn it, I'm being left behind here. I need to learn a sword and board, man. I'm also like vaguely curious about Mafia the Old Country, but that's one of those games that I probably wouldn't bother with unless it came to Game Pass, but I could see myself maybe having an unexpectedly good time with. It's about family. There's this racing game coming out called Formula Legends, which is kind of like a cutesy arcade racing take on Formula 1. However, I think it has the potential to be really boring or really cool. I'm not quite sure which one it'll land on. I took a look at the devs, and they've mostly made like Paw Patrol racing games and stuff in the past, but they're well-reviewed ones, so I don't know how to feel, but I'm kind of interested. There was also a lot of, I don't know if there's like a proper name for this aesthetic, but I call it PS1 core, where it's like modern games, but they've been designed to look like they came out on the PS1. A lot of Resident Evil adjacent stuff there as well. Very good for Reese, he's very happy. I'm not really a Resident Evil guy, but there was one game called Hark the Ghoul, which just looks interesting. It looks like the kind of adventure game that you don't get nowadays, and I still don't really have a full grasp on the gameplay of it and like whether it will truly be for me, but it just looks like the kind of game that I would pick up on a store shelf back 20 years ago if I was maybe a bit older back then, because this would not have appealed to me as a kid. And I'm just looking at the back of the box and I'm going, I want to see what's going on with this game. Like, there's another game that's been on my wishlist for a while called Dread Delusion, which kind of fits the similar bill of just, it's so crunchy and so retro, and it just looks like you go on a little PS1 style adventure, and I want to see what it's about. So that one went straight on my wishlist. And yeah, there was a ton of cool stuff from the Future Games show and the little LA live broadcast they did after that, but it was just like an absolute assault on the senses after a while, I'm not gonna lie. But anyway, the Xbox Game Showcase is coming up next, so I will be back to continue this recording when I've watched that. I don't really have anything specific I want to see, as mentioned last week, but maybe they'll surprise me. They did not surprise me. I'm not gonna lie, I was thoroughly whelmed. I think Xbox have kind of cornered the market on, we've got a first-person shooter with silly guns in a weird kind of setting. I think we've got that one down now. I think we've safely got that feather in our cap. I feel like we've got this weird overpopulation of games which are trying so hard to be unique and different, although they're all kind of falling on the retrofuturism thing at the same time. I don't want to be too mean, but there wasn't a lot for me in this one. And that's with the included I've got Game Pass and won't have to actually pay to access most of these games thing going for it too. The Outer Worlds 2 is a headliner and it does look good, and I will give that a try when it comes out. I never got too far into the original game, but this one looks like a fun evolution of it, and I will of course happily give it a go on Game Pass. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4, we obviously already know that's coming, but I guess Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are going to be in it, or at least one of them is. Grounded 2? That's pretty cool. My interest was at least a little bit piqued with Blood of the Dawnwalker. Yeah, that's the name of it. Don't know how that gameplay is going to land with me, and I don't think it was a Game Pass one, and it's, you know, I have to rein myself in because I do find myself going, oh, that game looks cool. Not cool enough for me to buy or ever think about again, but because I'm looking at it right now, I'm going to mention that it looks cool. I think it's one of those. There's this creature collector game called Animo, which could either be really fun or like really lame. It's kind of hard to tell. It could like skew anywhere between those two extremes. Xbox is finally getting Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's remake, not rebirth. And it's also finally getting Final Fantasy 16. Invincible Versus is another fighting game that looks really cool. I don't know if fighting games are having like a resurgence right now, but that was another one that made me and Reese go, man, we gotta learn how to like fighting games. The art style of a game kind of looks better than the art style of a show, which is a little bit funny. And we were surprised with a Persona 4 remake. I guess maybe I'm not that tuned into that particular franchise. Maybe people were half expecting it after they did Persona 3 Reloaded, but Persona 4 Revival looks really cool. I've never tried to play Persona 4, by which I mean I've played a tiny bit of Persona 5, I've played a decent bit of Persona 3 on various versions. This looks like the one to wait for and the way to play it, and I might actually check it out when it comes out. Or I might continue sticking to my plans of actually finishing games and check it out when I have time. If you were around for last week's Weekly Waypoint, I was talking about how I do want to put a little bit more effort into actually sticking to games and finishing them. You know, I'm not going to be playing a single game until I finished it. I'm not a superhuman, but I do want to have at least one game within my rotation that is a game that I am making myself stick to until I have finished it, and those games will likely be RPGs. All the same, I can now, with the distance of time, look at Persona 3 Reload and say, the reason I fell off that game was because I was enjoying the life sim side of things much more than the combat/RPG side of things, which was just a little bit too simple and repetitive. Persona 4, being a game that was designed later on, hopefully fixes that. Also, they chose a particular look for Persona 4 Revival, which looks pretty good. But yeah, you know, that's pretty much all I care about. They're remastering Gears of War again, and it just looks like the same game. Call of Duty is deciding to be weird this time around, and I think collectively pissed off the entire internet by looking like something unique and then being revealed to be Call of Duty. Which, you know, I mean, to that I say, hey, Call of Duty's trying to be different. I guess maybe that's alright, innit? As long as they actually deliver on that theme. Also, is it me or did Phil Spencer just casually announce a bunch of games? Like he said, you know, we've got the next Forza coming, the next Halo coming, we've got, you know, a game that's been with us from the start making a comeback. Blinks for Time Sweeper, blinks for Time Sweeper. I was like, oh, may I see it? And he was like, no. By the way... Oh, should we get into slightly ranty territory? Just to kind of continue to align with my current direction of thinking in terms of let's do indie games more than AAA games, and I'm so sick of the over-corporatization of the gaming space. Matt Booty! We had like a 3-minute segment of Matt Booty talking to us about Xbox and player values and IPs and franchises and content, and oh man, it was like he was talking to shareholders. It was like he thought I had bought stock in the company and was looking to see what they were doing to continue increasing their value. I don't care, Matt Booty, I want to see video games. And normally Xbox is pretty good with that, by the way. Xbox is one of the more tightly run shows, don't get me wrong. They do go game into game into game into game into game. And it's definitely far less guilty of like the Summer Games Fest, like cutaways and talking about ads and stuff. But at the same time, God, every word out of Matt Boosie's mouth just made me feel less human. It just, maybe it's no different to what we normally get, but it just rubbed me the wrong way this time around. Oh, also, I should probably talk about the fact that Xbox announced a handheld console, kind of like nonchalantly. I mean, not nonchalantly, it was an announcement, but it was like the third or fourth thing in the show, and when they showed it off, I was like, oh, it's another handheld cloud streaming device, because otherwise they wouldn't be announcing it this way. But no, you can download games natively to it. You can play every game that they showed off in this showcase natively on it, meaning it is something akin to a Steam Deck, one would imagine. And I don't know, I feel like you open or close with something like that. You don't just stick it in the middle. What the fuck? I'm a little confused about, you know, because this is a big deal. I'm confused as to why they don't seem to think it's a big deal. I mean, they do, but I don't know, it came off weird. And the name, by the way, they have 2 SKUs for this console. They have the Xbox Ally X and the Xbox Ally. That's it. Not the Xbox Ally X and the Xbox Ally S. No, no. The Xbox Ally X and the Xbox Ally. Okay. Why do we keep ditching the naming convention at every opportunity? Also, for anyone wondering why it's called an Ally, which is a really weird name, I'm pretty sure Xbox bought the people who made the Rogue Ally kind of handheld streaming units, because I remember Phil Spencer talking about how much he liked them on a podcast a few years ago. Back when I was a little bit more listening to official brand product podcast things. So it comes as no surprise. I don't know if they bought a company or if they just teamed up with them or whatever, but yeah, that's why it's called an Ally. It's still a weird name, I agree, but mainly it's the naming convention that they just refuse to follow, which has me just shaking my head and going, what are you doing? What are you doing? Is this has got to be a strategy at this point, right? This has got to be like a conscious decision that they're making. This has got to be something which somehow ends up bringing in money, because otherwise why would you do this? But yeah, when it comes to the handheld itself, I just look at it and think, I mean, I haven't looked at the price. Hang on, let me check the price. As of the time of recording, they have not announced the price, and the webpage for it, yes, I know that Lambo just did 1,000 flips, we'll get back to that. The webpage for it is not functioning, so yeah, I don't know, unless it's significantly cheaper than a Steam Deck and has decent specs to rival it, I don't see myself caring about this. Maybe this would have been a more significant deal or more significant announcement if Steam Decks didn't already exist, because it is basically a Steam Deck. You're not limited to like Xbox games. There's like other stuff you can do with it or whatever. Anyway, that's been my thoughts, broadly speaking, on Not-E3 this year. Remember to head on over to Dimension Jam to catch the cross-dimensional scoop on everything, and I will catch you in whatever I make next.